Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Booked. Thank you, Deborah, for having us. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day. This is great. So I'll do about 20-ish minutes of actual reading from my book. This book, The Way In, What a Hospice Chaplain Learned Living with Parkinson's in Poetry and Prose. And then we'll open the floor for questions, answers, and smart remarks. I have found most hospice patients are happy to see the chaplain, at least receptive. Some simply politely decline the visit, while others are willing to chat as long as there's no explicit religion involved. Fine. But I once had a patient who was downright hostile. I made it clear that my visit was something to be checked off with as much dispatch and as little engagement as possible. Unlike most visits, this one was required because hospital patients are entitled by law to spiritual counseling if they want it. And there's no way of finding out what they want or what they need without talking to them. This initial talk is called a spiritual assessment, and then involves forms to be filled out, checklists to be filled up, and summary to be filled in, after which they never need lay eyes on us again if they don't want to. When I arrived for this assessment, I found the patient, a wiry, fully ambulatory man with a Dwayne from One Day at a Time mustache and an aggressively blue-collar vibe, still at lunch with a friend. When he was informed that I was there to see him, he replied, loud enough for me to hear, but without deigning to turn around and look at me, that he wasn't finished with his lunch yet. Eventually, he rose and, still not looking at me, he began to lope off in the direction of more coffee, the John. Well, are you coming or not? Okay, his room. So I knew that if I were going to accomplish anything pastorally with this man, as opposed to simply bureaucratically, which is not satisfying, I knew I was going to have to find a way in past his defenses. Luckily, the right question enabled me to find one. So a sonnet called The Way In. He flopped down in his dirty baseball hat, stuffed up leather jacket. Yes, I've paid my funeral expenses. Yes, I made peace with my kids. Peremptory as that, he obviously had no room for collars. What is it you're retired from? I prodded. Union organizer. I nodded. Some of my father's uncles back in the hollers helped organize the West Virginia mines. Alfred. Long silence. And he said, that's back when organizers wound up dead. They left the cushy jobs to me and mine. The talk flowed then, a parley long delayed. Then we took hands and bowed our heads and prayed. Now, a number of the chapter introductory passages in this book are taken from my Facebook posts, which may seem cheap, but allow me to explain. Most people who have Parkinson's disease are a lot older than me, and nobody is listening to them. So I take what I say on Facebook or in the book or any place I hear very seriously. I regard it sort of as a trust, because I see it as my mission to bring before an unknowing and uncaring world things that are outside of its usual purview. So the Facebook posts, actually work very meticulously odd. This one is from February 22nd, 2022. Okay, so here's an update for those of you following at home. The drug, which has kept me alive the past year and a half, as well as able to walk more or less safely, speak more or less distinctly, and think more or less clearly, is now making me psychotic. and a nightmare to live with. So one of the supreme ironies of this disease is that from here on, the sicker I become, the less Cinnamon I get. My task is now to make the inevitable shift from fighting to acceptance. Even knowing the hell I put my family through when I was crazy, even after sitting by the bedsides of so many dying people, it's harder than I thought it would be. After my first few episodes of delusional rage, I came under intense pressure from my neurologist and my poor traumatized wife to lower my daily dose of Cinnamon. And though I obviously didn't want to terrorize my family, I also didn't want to become unable to write poetry or take my dog to the woods, among other things. So I convinced myself that there must be some delicately balanced dose at which I could remain both active and not a danger to myself and others. This proved not to be the case. I'll interrupt myself here for a moment to say that most of you have heard that Van Gogh wrote something like, painted something like 90% of his paintings in the last 6 years of his life. When he was essentially continually manic. But I was under too much Cinnamon, manic to the point where I was dyskinesia all the time. I wrote a lot of poems, almost a poem a day. And no lie, I miss that. I really do. Anyway, while still kicking against the goads, I wrote a poem in an attempt to express my panic at the prospect of losing my faculties even earlier than my medical team had expected. It is inspired by some ancient Akkadian clay tablets I had learned about years before in a graduate school course on ancient Israel. And it's called The Siege of Jaffa. Before I begin, Deborah, is it possible that there be some water? Thank you so much. Dry mouth is a Parkinson thing I keep forgetting to deal with. There's an adorable story about this poem. I tried to get in touch with my old ancient Israel professor at the University of Minnesota to ask him for details about these tablets. And he's apparently retired, but his replacement took my email. He guided me toward the right letters and all that. So I found the stuff I needed, wrote the poem, and sent it back to him. And he was so gracious about how powerful the poem it was, and how gratifying it was for him as a teacher that someone so many years later would remember it and use it in such a way. Thanks very much. Oh my goodness, yes. Okay, so the Siege of Jaffa, an Egyptian government outpost in western Canaan, 14th century BCE. I prostrate myself 7 times and again to the pharaoh Akhenaten, a god among men. The floodplains of the Nile are a banner unfurled, in your court at Amarna, the jewel of the world. In your palace and temples, you worship the sun, who looks down upon Canaan by hordes overrun. For from Jaffa's high watchtower, we see their dread plans. Let the king look after his lands. The Habiru insurgency prospers and thrives. If the king will send archers, we may keep our lives. If the archers don't come, then beyond any doubt, the king's lands will be forfeit before the year's out. They have taken 3 cities and shall soon take a 4th. They plunder our stronghold each time they set forth. May my lord give attention and issue commands. Let the king look after his lands. They could not conquer Gezer, yet they force it to pay a tribute of slaves. And to get them away, Gezer's king must pay ransom, the price of a slave for each of his people he is minded to save. King Labiah gave Shechem away to the horde because a pitched battle he could not afford. When we look on their host, we are desperate, unmanned. Let the king look after his lands. In Bivlos, the cities of mountain and sea have joined the invaders and declared themselves free. Though our chariots have turned back their host on the plains, they have overrun Sumer, of which nothing remains. Our Habiru say idols are deaf, blind, and dumb. Why refurbish Ra's temples while Canaan succumbs? What becomes then of strangers? What becomes then of strategies, tactics, and plans? Let the king look after his lands. The host of Habiru are raising a shout. They have hemmed us all in. They are blotting us out. They pour down from the hills in their thousands, and see, they are taking it all. They are stronger than we. Will the king turn his mind from the glories of Ra and give aid to his outposts that languish afar? Only Jaffa and Jerusalem still withstand. Let the king look after his lands. Jerusalem's ruler's no king and no mayor, but a cunning old soldier who chanced to be there when the horde's latest sieges laid low Salem's strength. So cunning they are, they will get in at length. They will find a way in when they come back again. Of our Canaanite empire, no scrap will remain. When the Jebusites perish in our former slaves' hands, and the king will not have any lands. The king will not have any lands. Too long, didn't read. The substantia nigra is the part of my brain that's diseased. Though some cognitive functions remain, organizational skills fall apart more each day, and executive functions are wasting away. But where the dopamine's made in substantia N, cells are being destroyed and won't function again. Two citadels still are defying their fates, the part that can learn and the part that creates. But disease, like a harrowing host, still comes on until all is laid waste, until everything's gone. I'll interrupt myself again to say, with Parkinson's drugs, we tend to have high periods, which we call on, and low periods, which we call off. I'm about 20% on right now. My jaw muscles are very stiff. I'm very hard to move fluidly, and obviously tripping over my tongue a lot. So I wanted to give you permission to give you the old, hey, what's that? If I don't speak in a way that you can understand, okay?
So far, so good.
Okay. If I were to apply Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's famous 5 stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, to this process of loosening my grip on my lifeline drug, I suppose the siege of Jaffa would fall into. I'm going to start that paragraph again. If I were to apply Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's famous 5 stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, to this process of loosening my grip on my lifeline drug, I suppose the siege of Jaffa would fall into the denial stage, at which I was so convinced that there must be something I could do to put off my decline a little while longer. The anger stage was more than adequately expressed in my psychotic rages. And because I've long firmly believed, and my hospice experience confirms me in this belief, that God doesn't take people home because he needs another angel, whatever similar crap we told the bereaved, I was able to skip the bargaining stage. My next poem, Bird and Beast, was a cri de coeur from the depths of the depression stage. Bird and Beast. A bird I had, it sang to me of God, of heart's desire, and of the body's vast, inexorable need this side the sod, of loss and grief and joys that cannot last. It warbled tales within the tales I knew, and sang the golden threads between all things. Like darting fish that flash in running brooks, it soared aloft and sang my soul the view. Song of the buoying air beneath its wings, sang the enchantments everywhere it looked. A beast my dear ones had, chimerical, like a fury winged or hippogriff, devouring maw and claws that tore all soft, undefended flesh, a thing of myth and horror. Always watching, keen, alert for any cause to loose its righteous rage on some misstep, some lapse or violation. It spared not one of all I loved. It hurt without discrimination, till an age of violence made their lives a desolation. I am sick unto death. My bird brought me life and kept song vital in my heart. The beast brought wounding claws, a temper rife with spite, and tore my dear ones' lives apart. My bird sang strength into my flagging soul. The beast roared terror, bringing in its wake reproach and anger, fear, and scorching shame. Until I saw it, steadily and whole. I knew at last, oh mercy for Christ's sake, the bird, the beast were one thing and the same. The same drug that allowed me to function was making my family's life intolerable. By the way, I want to make it clear right up front now that all the violent, physically violent imagery in the poems is metaphorical. Right? Well, heck, did you read the Chestnut Hill Local article about this reading? It's wonderful they did it. I'm very glad they did it. Very grateful to them for that. But I was afraid anyone who came here because they read that article, we're gonna have Kevlar body armor or something on them.
I forgot to wear my cross.
Once I'd written the following poem entitled simply Psalm, I knew I was within sight of achieving acceptance. The poem was inspired by a passage from James Thurber's 1933 short story, The Night the Bed Fell. The narrator describes an aunt who never went to bed at night without the fear that a burglar was going to get in and blow chloroform under her door with a tube. To avoid this calamity, for she was in greater dread of anesthetics than of losing her valuables, she always put her money, silver, household goods, and other valuables in a neat stack just outside her bedroom, with a note reading, "This is all I have. Please take it and do not use your chloroform, as this is all I have." Like Thurber's narrator's crazy aunt, I too had reached the stage at which I was prepared to surrender all of my valuables, if only I could avoid being anesthetized, which literally means rendered unable to feel. Psalm. O Lord, I have barred my door. I have bolted my gates and locked my windows. Turn back the burglar and the marauder to thwart the thief in the night, who comes to steal and to destroy and demolish what he cannot carry off. My strength he takes, my understanding he dismantles. He joins my might to his while I grow dull and weary. Maker of all things, I unfasten my portals, fling wide my gates, and raise my windows to the sun. Though thieves break in and steal, and the despoilers pilfer in the dark, though they take away powers of mind and body, sparing neither strength of youth nor wisdom of years, I invite them now, nor beg them spare anything of all you have entrusted to me. One thing I ask of the Eternal, though might departs and strength be overturned, though thought be cut off and understanding blighted, let me keep love, O giver of my strength. Let love uplift me like the buoying wind. Love of family warm me like the sun. Love of friends refresh me like the moon, like the rain. Love of those who teach and those who learn, of counselors and counsel, all the love. And let my love break forth as from a dam, and all be cleansed in scouring, soothing love. Anyone want to take a stab at why I call that a psalm? It has to do with the poetic form. Ancient Hebrew poetry didn't use rhyme like Southern Mediterranean poetry did, or meter. It didn't use alliteration like Northern European poetry did. Rather, it used balances of ideas. Idea A, idea B. The heavens are telling the glory of God. The skies declare his handiwork. One day tells it to another. One night gives the information to the next. Oh Lord, you have Oh Lord, you have searched me out and known me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You discern my thoughts from afar. So there's always that, those balancing ideas. And after I wrote this, I wanted to see how it would work if it sounded more like a psalm. So I'm going to read this one again as though it were in psalm fashion. See if it still works. Oh Lord, I have barred my door. I have bolted my gates and locked my windows to turn back the burglar and the marauder, to thwart the thief in the night, who comes to steal and to destroy and demolish what he cannot carry off. My strength he takes, my understanding he dismantles. He joins my might to his, so that I grow dull and weary. Maker of all things, I unfasten my portals, fling wide my gates, and raise my windows to the sun. Though thieves break in and steal, and though the spoilers pilfer in the dark, though they take away powers of mind and body, sparing neither strength of youth nor wisdom of years, I invite them now, nor beg them spare anything of all you have entrusted to me. One thing I ask of the eternal, though might departs and strength be overturned, though thought be cut off and understanding blighted, let me keep love, O giver of my strength. Let love uplift me like the buoying wind. The love of family warm me like the sun. The love of friends refresh me like the rain. The love of those who teach and those who learn, of counselors and counseled, all the love. And let my love break forth as from a dam, and all be cleansed in scouring, soothing love. I thought, yeah, that sounds like a song to me. So, Facebook post, June 11th, 2021. Both of my parents were the first in their respective families to attend college. My mother left the Pennsylvania coal country, while my dad escaped from the West Virginia holler. On the farm where my dad, now 88, grew up, he's now 90 actually, they used to make cottage cheese every day and set it in the spring house to keep cool, as there was no electricity. My dad used to take corn and wheat to the mill to be ground into flour on horseback. No one particularly encouraged him to get an education and leave Appalachia. That exodus was a bus he had to drive himself. My mother became the first woman head of the biology department at the small Jesuit college where she taught. They offered her the position as an interim, and she turned them down. She has a plaque at the Women's Rights National Historical Park in Seneca Falls. Today, I will get to see something I once feared I might never live to see, my elder daughter's high school graduation. She will head into the world full of calculus, and photography training, wilderness survival skills, and a robust Quaker value system in which her private friend's school education has imbued her. I am a very lucky man, more beholden to the toil and hardship of my people that I usually have the grace to remember. I remember today. I'm going to interrupt myself again. I want to read a poem I wrote about my daughter. We had them in daycare at Christ Ascension Lutheran Church daycare down the road here. Pardon me.
Butterflies?
Yes.
Flowers. Yeah.
Wow, this is great. Thank you. This is called The Butterfly House. No. 99 is the yellow flower. No. Thank you, but Butterfly House. Page 77. Your arms flung wide, your face with wonder shone. Bright wings on every part of you. They went right to her, the awed teacher said, as soon as she'd unzipped the caterpillar house. 2 years they did it, in butterfly houses, until when you were 6, they came no more. I ached to watch you stretch your fingers out as you longed for them to light there as before. Some things we must each live ourselves, but tell the story as some single grand event. No more will earth yield up its increase, fell the doom, as forth from paradise we went. Time was, you could. Now, we no longer can. We grow. It hurts. This is the fall of man. So, yes, now on page 99. I have my elder daughter and I have become estranged. And I wrote a poem for her. It was actually intended to be a song. And I set it to music. There's a link in the book, which you can hear my friend Abby Palmer sing the song. She's wonderful. But I'll just give it a rough rendering here. They used to burn a candle in the window by the door to guide the weary traveler home from school or sea or war. But now we have our smartphones and the fire marshal too. So it's through your spirit, not your eyes, I'm calling out to you. Yellow flowers in the hallway, like you loved when you were small. Carnations and chrysanthemums, you bend to smell them all. For your 3rd birthday, tiger-striped lilies, you chose them for your own. So there'll be yellow flowers in the hallway until my girl comes home. You always went for sunflowers at the co-op flower stand. Let's bring these home for mommy, big bright blooms in small pink hands. You run into the garden and cut ornamental ferns, set off the blooms as if by instinct. I don't know how you learned. Yellow flowers in the hallway like you loved when you were small. Buttercups and dandelions, you bend to smell them all. For your 4th birthday, yellow carnations, you chose them for your own. So there'll be yellow flowers in the hallway till my girl comes home. I will leave some honeysuckle to remember sunburned fun. and I'll leave some black-eyed Susans for the damage I have done. I'll go down to the creek side, and I'll find some bright jewel weed. Pray I have no cause to use it, but I want it close at need. Yellow flowers in the hallway, like you loved when you were small. Zinnias, mums, and roses, you'd bend to smell them all. For your first formal yellow hydrangeas, you chose them for your own. So there'll be yellow flowers in the hallway until my girl comes home. Yellow flowers in the hallway, like you loved when you were small. In woods and gardens, fields and churchyards, you'd bend to smell them all. For graduation, wedding, everything, you'll choose them for your own. And there'll be yellow flowers in the hallway until my girl comes home. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. I really appreciate this. That is the end of my prepared remarks. I'd like to open the floor to questions, answers, smart remarks. Letty.
I do have a question. I mentioned that I have a friend who's dying with whatever ended up not having. And she visit her in October, and I am anxious about it because
Letty's question was, she mentioned that before I was diagnosed correctly with Parkinson's, partly because I don't have the kind that involves tremors. So it kind of hid from doctors for a while. I was diagnosed first with a spinal stenosis and had two huge, painful, pointless surgeries on my neck. And then they diagnosed me with something called corticobasal degeneration, which is like Parkinson's, but compressed and a more awful death involved. And the person diagnosed with it usually has 3 to 5 years. And I was wondering what to say to her friend with corticobasal degeneration when she sees her. As a hospice chaplain, I said very little actually. I mostly just listened. Say.
she's also lost a lot.
Right, right.
If I may, I think we.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing I noticed when I thought I had corticobasal degeneration was that there's a passage from First Peter where Peter says, "You are a chosen nation, a royal priesthood, people set apart, so that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of the darkness into the wonderful light." And what I realized that when I thought I had CBD was that the darkness is what I live in most of the time. All the stuff that goes round and round in my head. The wonderful light is what's happening right here and right now. Whenever we attend to people in front of us, the things we're doing, the things that are happening, our surroundings, we are in the wonderful light. And many dying people I've noticed a sense of gratitude for being pulled out of their heads into the room with people. So it isn't exactly advice on what to say, but it's an advice for a mental environment out of which the right thing to say might grow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If there is a right thing to say, I think it will come to you because you have that mindset. Does that make sense at all? Okay. Most of what I say on Facebook to people with problems like that, I say things like, "Well, damn, that sucks," because
You talk when we talk about the platitudes, things that we say, that you don't really, as a patient or whatever, you don't really want to need to hear the things about in a better place. So,
Yeah.
those kind of things.
I highly recommend a book called "Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I Have Loved." Really good book. Very good book. Okay, other. Yes, Alan. Jewelweed. Um, Jewelweed, it grows all over Wissahickon. It grows all over. It grows near water. It grows in damp soil. It also happens to grow usually in the same places that stinging nettle does, and poison ivy. So if you sting yourself with stinging nettle, find some jewelweed, break open the stem, and rub the juice on the sting, and it really does bring the inflammation down and the pain and itching down. That's what that references to. The question was, what is jewelweed? The answer. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Really, to be honest, I mean, what it is, more or less, interesting thing because recent next year, really struggle. It's interesting. That situation.
Mm.
Your case was actually opposite.
Thank you. Alan's remark was about reading scripture and different ways of bringing the written word to life with the spoken word. And they're vast. I mean, when I was in St. Paul, Minnesota, one of our congregants was the guy who did all the incoming voicemail messages for West Publishing. He was called the voice of West Publishing. And I loved it when he read, especially whenever he was reading prophecy, because I loved the smooth, detached, absolutely uh, unaffected voice in which he read God, which is just brilliant. Um, but they're wild extremes anyway. I mean, I remember hearing a Presbyterian preacher from somewhere in the deep South And the line was from Isaiah, speaking of one of the suffering servant songs from Isaiah. And the text was, part of the text was, no one would even look at him. An Episcopalian would have intoned that. No one would even look at him. And this Southern preacher said, nobody would even look at him. And it's very vivid. Oh, you mean like those guys at the Stingrays on Walnut Street? Wow. That's very vivid. So there's many different ways of reading, and we just have to find what works for us. Thank you very kindly.
Touching on that, the difference in the reading between a song as opposed to prose poetry. You like some more water, sir?
I'm trying to signal out here. Thank you so much.
There was quite a difference in the reading. And when you did it as a song, I thought the imagery a lot more. I got more out of that reading.
When I chanted it?
Yes,
Really?
yes. Like I said, the images were more vivid. That just had that sense of flow, and that back and forth that you talked about really worked.
At the same time, you gave us a kind of lens with which to look at it. We didn't have other.
Right.
Yeah.
And that really helped.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way the tones are constructed, they're constructed exactly to bring out those pairs of ideas.
When you explained the lack of poetic devices in it, I was like, well, where is the poetry? Then when you changed it, I heard the poetry.
Right. So good. Thank you very much. Not at all, not at all. Okay, any other questions, answers, or remarks?
Where's your wife?
On her way to Vermont to pick up my daughter, who has been touring with a youth circus throughout New England, and they're done now, so gotta go get her. And also, I should say there is more about my family in this book than my family is comfortable with. So I don't expect to see them in any readings in the foreseeable future.
I just want to say how grateful I am for your willingness to share your journey. I expect that eventually I will. In my family, and my jaw trembles, and I expect that that is really appreciate your openness about your own journey, your own struggles, fears, joys.
Thank you, Lily. Ina, do you ever had it?
Yeah, as a Facebook friend of yours, I certainly appreciate the updates, and every time we get together, I don't always feel like giving you the fifth degree about like, what's going on, but I get a little sense of what's going on from what you post, and it's instructive. But the other thing is, I want to know, how is Murphy?
Murphy, my big 75-pound golden retriever, is adjusting to apartment life. I'm adjusting to not having a fenced-in backyard to let him out into, having to get up at 6 in the morning before I've had my meds to walk him around the block. He's adjusting, and happily the entrance into the Gresham Valley Creek woods right near our apartment is a spectacular trail. So And one place I hope to find some of these on my own eventually. Well, he'll make it. It's a setback for him, but he'll bounce back, I'm sure.
Do you have a sense, if he has a sense when you're having worse days?
Yes. It's funny. I mean, you can tell when I'm moping around the house. But on the other hand, the last time I fell in the woods, came over and took the stick I was about to throw for him. And thanks, buddy. These are rocks, you know. So, we time for one more, everybody? Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you. It's amazing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sign my book.
I will. And they're available for sale right at the counter over there.